Joining us from New York City now is Nicolle Wallace. She is a former White House communications director under President George W. Bush. She also worked as a senior advisor for the McCain-Palin campaign in 2008. She now spends a lot of time serving as a political analyst and commentator for NBC News and MSNBC. Nicolle, thank you for spending some time with us. You are doing this great series, In Trump They Trust, and you're talking to voters in some of those key states that really turned last year's election. You visited some folks here in Bay City, Michigan, which actually flipped from blue in 8 and 12 to red in 16. What did those voters say to you about why they dumped the Democrats?
Well, they're so interesting. They affirm my belief that all the wisdom lies way outside the Northeast corridor. And so, you know, the media has done a lot of soul searching. How did we get this election wrong? Part of it is we didn't spend enough time in places like Bay City, where it wasn't even close for these voters. I mean, they were so drawn to the idea of an outsider. They were so, they felt so detached from the modern Democratic Party.
I've been a Democrat my whole life, but I'm not sure I'll ever be a Democrat again.
I mean, no one thought he would win Michigan. It's amazing that you guys all voted for Trump in a state that Hillary Clinton didn't even think she had to worry about. How do you think that happened?
She was out of touch. She didn't think she had to worry about it. Michigan was like, okay, this guy knows. He's on point. We're going to go with Trump because he has answers. We don't always like him. Sometimes he offends the crap out of people, but he has an answer.
It was remarkable to me to see just how firm they were in their disapproval of not just Hillary Clinton, but in today's Democratic Party, and how positive they were about Donald Trump, warts and all. These are voters who are very smart. They're paying very close attention to the news. I was with them the day that Donald Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, had resigned. They knew that that was a stinky mess of a problem, and they wanted to see him improve upon maybe some of his judgment, some of his decisions, but they were with him 100%.
I was looking at some figures from the previous elections. I mean, in 08, it was 57-41 for Obama, 53-47 in 12, and it literally did flip 53-41 in 16, Trump over Clinton. Is what you heard here in Bay County, does that fit with what you're hearing in the other states you visited, Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, and listen, we are talking to lifelong Democrats who voted for Trump. So we're really not looking at either party's base. We're looking at, well, actually, we're looking at what was once part of the Democrats' base, I guess. So we're talking to union workers who felt like Donald Trump speaking to the working man and woman. I heard in Wisconsin that they finally had a president who understood people who worked with their hands. Sort of a remarkable thing to feel about Donald Trump, who we know here in New York as a rather ostentatious billionaire and TV star. But in Bay City, where a lot of people sort of rely on their friends and colleagues in the unions, they didn't feel like the Democratic Party understood their plight or was advancing their cause. So they sided with Donald Trump. A lot of them went from Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary to Donald Trump in the general, and that's a phenomenon that I also find fascinating. Do you listen to what the media says, or do you just assume they're against him?
I'll listen to what they say at first, but then, yeah, I basically just assume the worst on their part. There's been plenty of times where I've heard something about him, and then it takes 5 minutes to go research a YouTube video and watch the actual interview and see that it's not the case, or it's out of context.
Now, when you were in President Bush's White House, you had a fairly good working relationship with the press corps. What do you think about this White House's dealings with reporters right now? You know, the fake news, excluding certain outlets from briefings and whatnot. This seems like a very new phenomenon.
Yeah, listen, I think it's a mistake for the media to spend a lot of time talking about themselves. But I asked the voters in Bay City how they felt about Donald Trump spending so much time in hand-to-hand combat with individuals in the media. And it's really not where they want to see him focus his attention. They say, you know, to the president, we are with you. You won. You have our support. We have your back. I think his voters would like to see him focus on the agenda that they sent him there to enact. As a former press professional, I can't help but wonder if it isn't a straw man tactic, you know, that Donald Trump needs to constantly be at war with somebody, and the media is his target.
The panel is almost exclusive anti-Trump, and the hatred and venom coming from his mouth, the hatred coming from other people on your network. Now, I will say this, I watch it, I see it, I'm amazed by it.
And for someone who won without the Republican establishment and without the Democratic establishment and without the media establishment, I think Donald Trump turns to the media as an enemy, as just a constant, almost a fallback and a crutch. But I think his voters would like to see him move off that a little bit, move off all the tweeting, and really focus on the agenda that they are very much behind, even the most controversial aspects of it.
It's interesting that you say that. I saw a tweet from you over the weekend. You were responding to a question that if the president asked you for some advice, what would it be? Can you share some of that?
Well, I said stop tweeting, stop watching cable news, get some exercise, and I think I added get an Ambien prescription. I mean, he gets himself in the most trouble of all when he's up late at night. You know, my husband doesn't let me do a lot of tweeting. He thinks that nothing good can come from it. Donald Trump needs someone in his life like my husband who says, put down the Twitter, as George Bush used to call it, the Google. But all this constant haggling with people that will probably. He's fighting with reporters who he only makes stronger and more read and more famous by fighting with them. He is the leader of the free world. His words are heard all over the world and interpreted and analyzed. And spending as much time as he does watching his own cable news reel and tweeting at his critics is really just a colossal waste of time.